Welcome to the fresh new episode of Dynamic CISO Talk Show. This is where we get experts from the industry leaders, and visionaries to talk to us on a wide variety of issues that are contemporary, significant, and also give us practical know how to deal with the challenges that they are facing in the real world. So, in that sequence, we have today with us, we have the pleasure of having with us uh, Marco Figueroa, who's the head of product at BreachQuest. Marco is a domain expert in the cybersecurity and threat intelligence, has been working in this area since the year 2006. Very recently, the interesting part of this conversation is that very recently, actually, Marco studied the leaked chats about the Conti ransomware and has interpreted and published them in a very long blog. Uh, we all know how the influence of ransomware has become so very pervasive in the past many years, especially in the last 2 years since the onset of pandemic. Uh, this is today perhaps the most worrisome factor for any cybersecurity or infosec leader. The rise in ransomware attacks is the topmost concern for any organization that is in business. So I will not steal the thunder anymore. We would like to listen in from the horse's mouth, the expert. Marco, welcome to this talk show. How are you
Thank
doing?
you. I am doing amazing. I'm excited to be on. Thank you for inviting me on the show. And I definitely want to spread the word of the Conti ransomware group that their leaks were chat, and I'm ready to go.
Excellent, excellent, wonderful. We are so glad that you agreed to talk to us at a very short notice. So, Marco, you have a long history of
hmm
working as a security researcher and analyst. Start with telling us about your expertise, the areas that you specialize in, and your role as the product head at BreachQuest right now.
Sure, I'll give you the Cliff Notes version of the last 20 years, as short as possible. You know, I first got into cybersecurity, going to conferences, and my first big break in security came in the way of going working at Pepsi and doing like vulnerability scans and stuff like that. And then I transitioned over to Booz Allen Hamilton, where I did a lot of reverse engineering of malware, and I did a lot of training, like 3 4 years of just learning how to reverse engineer code, binaries, and looking at IOCs and writing reports. And then from there, I moved over to McAfee, where I worked at APG, was the Advanced Programs Group that we did a lot of APT tracking. This was 2013. And then I had the opportunity to move to Intel, which at the time McAfee was a subsidiary of Intel, and I worked doing a lot of the investigations, a lot of threat hunting, reverse engineering, and Intel's such a large company and has so many endpoints that there were so many interesting cases to work on. And then I was going to leave Intel, and I decided there was an opportunity that opened up that I couldn't pass up. This was like a once in a lifetime opportunity, which was to work on looking at, well, doing research in the BIOS, right? When I first moved over, I knew nothing of the BIOS, right? I didn't know its own like OS, and you start to understand and unpack. And I felt going over there, I was like a white belt, and I didn't know anything. So I had the opportunity. I worked doing that for 2 years, and it was amazing. We did a lot of cool research. Um, and then I went to Sentinel One to be a threat researcher, and it was amazing. And during that time, during that conversion, swinging over, I understood like how ransomware is really affecting companies nowadays. Everybody, I was always worried and looking for the next APT, which is advanced persistent threat actors, and I was always looking for those because those in it basically I was interested since 2013, just finding, all of these new APT groups, or you would do threat hunting and find binaries that were associated to different APTs. And then from there, I moved over to my role, where I'm the head of product at BreachQuest, and we are developing the priority platform, which
All
is
right.
which
It's
is
very
very,
fascinating.
very, yeah, it's the Cliff Notes version, a 5 minute intro on myself.
No, I can understand. You can't describe the 20-year history in 5 minutes time. I can understand. However, I'm very keen to know that cybersecurity, or studying and researching APTs, researching malware, researching binaries. Did it come to you by way of being passionate, or did you also do some kind of formal education into that?
I tell you, getting into reversing malware, when I came into this industry, it wasn't an industry. It was just it was a
Absolutely.
community. It was a
Yeah.
community. It wasn't cybersecurity wasn't a thing. It was, you had hacking conferences, you had people that were passionate about hacking, and then you had cybersecurity were admins and network, network engineers. So when I looked at it, I'm like, everybody in the hacking community can't all be pen testers because there aren't jobs there. I will focus on my defense, and I know eventually I'll find my path, and that was reverse engineering. And I think there's a bit of passion there, um, when you're first starting, because you're trying to figure out, how do you want to tackle, like, do you want to just look at malware and reverse engineer and use IDA Pro and all these tools. And then, you have your other side of it, where do you want to just be on the defense, where you have specific tools that you potentially write, scripts for, so they could then search for certain things. But I think when it comes to like passion and what I do, it's like finding that new thing, right? Finding that new binary, that new APT. And that's what I found when I found these leaks. Like, I was hearing about it on Twitter, and then I was like, this is big. And if it's true, this is really big,
Yeah.
because of the insight that you're going to get that many people do not have access to.
Absolutely. And I straight away jump into that hot conversation that I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
strike with you. So I came across this blog post, only through my access to the podcast that you did with Thread Post,
Mm-hmm.
which they have posted. Now you call it Conti-leaks. Now, I mean, from WikiLeaks to Conti-leaks, and it's really very fascinating to call it Conti-leaks. I couldn't move my eyes away from the blog at the same time. It was while I was reading, it was giving me a sense of scare to imagine that how legit these gangs have become. I mean, in their own sphere, in certain geographies, and how lethal they will be in the future if they continue to grow in the same way. So, what triggered the investigation that you did?
Well, I think there's two things, right? A lot of people outside of cybersecurity, or that are CISOs, or that aren't focused on ransomware, don't understand the underpinnings and how some of it work. They just know, hey, uh, you know, we got hit with ransomware, we got to pay a ransom, and that's the extent. But what I thought was, if I could get the inner workings and then display how those inner workings work, I can let everybody know what you're up against.
Yep.
And this is no joke. A lot of companies, and this is the reason why I did it. A lot of companies look at security as a cost. You're just a cost. You're always in the red with security. If you're in runway, if you're, in runway, or you're in an industry that doesn't, deal with security, you just like, oh, I'll get a CISO, I'll get a, one or two engineers. How are you going up? You could buy all the tools you want, right? How are you going up with over 100 people, over 160 people that are doing this full time because they're going to get paid off of, that
Absolutely.
company the victim's paying. And this is what I came into understanding because I understand APTs and the layers of APTs, right? And I thought at the time I understood how ransomware gangs like act, right? But it was a whole different ball game. The veil was lifted as soon as I started reading the first, 1,000 to 2,000, those chat logs. I started reading them, and I'm like, oh my god, this is gold. This is gold.
How much time did you spend on researching and reading those logs?
So when the logs, I know this exactly because I like started counting it after the first day.
Uh-huh.
So I knew it was big immediately. And my team, we have, it's pretty big. It's 12, we got 12 guys, and I pulled two of my guys. I'm like, look, we're gonna work on this, and I know it's gonna be big because no one has ever like gotten their hands on so much of this and made sense of it. So just like the first chat logs that we looked at was around 70,000 lines of chats, right?
Oh God.
So we started breaking it up. And then what happens is once you start reading, you start understanding who are the players. So luckily our team has Python scripting. So we started scripting some stuff out. We was like, okay, we know Stern, everybody asks him for payment. So we're gonna take all of Stern and we're gonna take out all his conversations, from Stern. We took out everything he said, right?
When
We
you
took
say
out
Stern, it's the big boss, right?
it's the bit Stern is the big boss. So
Yeah.
we took out and we started to then pick apart his vision for Conti, right?
Oh.
And then we started to see, okay, who are the other players that we're interested in? Then it came to, oh, wait, HR, HR and the recruiters, Salamandra. And then we started looking at, they kept on referring to Rocket Chat. And I'm like, wait, I didn't see the Rocket Chats. Let's go get it, right? Let
Okay.
me go get the Rocket Chats. And then when we got the Rocket Chats, then a whole nother world popped up, right? And those were, I think, 6 or 7, chat logs long, and another, 30,000 for each one. So scripting was very important to go through and decipher what we wanted to take out and what we wanted to understand, right? And I think having that better understanding and then us being on a Zoom call for 12 hours a day. Like nobody, like you could go get your lunch, do it. It was 12 hours a day. You asked the time. We started Tuesday. We ended on Friday, 12 to 14 hours a day. And on Friday, I said, guys, all right, we have 30 minutes left and we're going to shut it down because we could keep on going. Because there are stories that I'm going to tell you here that you're not going to hear, you're not going to read on the blog post, right? And these are the juicy things. This is why I like having these conversations, because here's some insight that's not going to be on the blog and how lethal these guys are, right? One thing I want to express to you, like all of these insights, you could write a book on it, right? And a lot of it, when you're reading it, it comes down to how are you interpreting it, and are you interpreting it right? And that was the discussion when we were in Zoom that we would have, right? Am I interpreting this right? Yes or no? And like I said, I think what saved us so much was writing Python scripts to ask questions to the data that we wanted to answer.
I mean, I'm so convinced of the fact that these CISOs and all these corporate leaders are pretty much sailing or scratching the surface. They certainly don't know what they are up to. So much so that when I was a couple of weeks ago when I was talking to the CISO of SolarWinds, and when he told that how Russian hackers uh, did a few reconnaissances into their systems without even anyone knowing that they are penetrated deep into their systems, I can completely understand what you are saying. So I'm all for it. I mean, I'll dump all my questions, and I'm all for listening to the story, the scary stories of what you interpret from these leaks.
Yeah, so what I think, and definitely, when I stop going, well, ask the questions, I have time. But what I walked away with is, like I said before, is to help other CISOs, help other security organizations understand what they're dealing with, right? Because they are meticulous on how they do a lot of their things, like the processes. Just like, and I'm not even talking about like the manuals that they've created and the training, right? The training that they have, it's like the best documentation that I've seen, right? I've worked on red teams. They don't have documentation like this. And again, having the conversations with the group, and we came to the realization, well, they probably, this documentation is like this because the turnover rate of people coming in and people leaving is so high. So you have to have
Absolutely.
that paperwork, because when I hire someone, I usually do one-on-ones, and other people have one-on-ones to train that person
Yep.
into getting better, because we expect them to be here for over a year at least. Not them. They have the process. They like, is everybody trained up? Okay, recruit more people. And even the way they recruit stuff, they use sites, they reach out to people, and then when they get the people, right, the candidates, then I don't know how you wouldn't think that this is shady if you don't speak to anyone, and your interview is on a chat like Rocket Chat, right? You're having an interview. There's interview rooms over chat. Like, there's no Zoom, or you don't meet people. So that was interesting. And then they have, different questions. And like I said, the way their structure is, it's a corporate structure. They treat it as a company. They really treat it as a company. And their paychecks are just like Bitcoin payments. And each team, there's three main teams, which has developers, penetration testers. They have a open source intelligence department. They have your admins, QA, full stack engineers. This is, it's a lot of people. It's money that is being poured in, and they know that it's going to pay off because they've seen that success through the payments. One thing I always will tell people is, you're telling me that if Coca-Cola was they had ransomware spread through their network, or any major company, and they had the money, and they were losing millions, you wouldn't pay if they asked you for a certain number, right? And the thing is, they have people that look at the company's revenue. They have, they like, follow this step, go to this site, check how much they make per year. And then they would ask, like, they would ask Bio, his name is Bio, which is the blogger, the negotiator, hey, do you know anything about how much insurance they can get?
Oh,
Because then we could ask for that, and they have to give it to us, right? And that was, to me, those eye-opening moments, like, yeah, they're really getting paid. And then what we did was, we looked at, I believe, since September to now, they made $50 million that we know of, right? They probably made more. And what wasn't in the blog that came out, I believe, 2 weeks ago, right when the war between Russia and Ukraine started, is now you have these negotiators that companies hire to negotiate, and they deal with the payment. They were like, we're not paying Conti. If you get hit with
okay.
Conti, we will not negotiate with you. And usually, these breach coaches, as they call them, you come in and they take care of all the negotiation and all the payments and everything like that. And they said they refuse to make any payments to Conti.
Okay. Now, this is going in a very different direction. I can talk to you the whole night about it. The way you're explaining, it's really scary. Uh, at some place, you've called it a ransomware unicorn, and I can understand why you call it. I mean, it can be a mere metaphor, or you really mean to say that they are either already or going to become as large as unicorns in terms of their market capital value, whatever. I mean,
Yep.
they cannot legitimately claim market capital. However, their size is growing to that extent. For my understanding, just because that Conti chats were leaked and that you got curious to investigate, or you have also researched, or do you also have researched other gangs? I mean, which may be not as big as, but currently what I'm seeing that, for example, Lockbit 2.0 or Paisa or Hive or Grief are of the same stature. I was recently reading the Intel 471 report, which says that Lockbit 2.0 was on top of everyone else, followed by Conti and then Paisa.
Yeah, I mean, in 2020, I did a lot of research in Ryuk. In my former company, I wrote a blog on Ryuk, and it was more about the code base as well as how it improved its timing once it's on a system and it executes, how fast it basically encrypts everything, right? And what I found, especially with something like this, is a lot of researchers try to get interviewed and try to get into those gangs to have a better understanding, but those are very far and few, right?
Yep.
And one of the things that we did was we understood the magnitude of what potentially we can get out of this, right? So we can help educate the people out there with, look, they have recruiting, they even have onboarding, right? They onboard their new workers so they can get trained and skilled. And we even put in there, like, you know reverse one of the leads. He was like, did the recruiter tell you what we do? And he's like, well, we do some sort of mixer, some kind of service site, right? And he's like, ever heard of ransomware? He's like, nope, never heard of that. Now, whether he was being jokingly, but it goes on and on. Have you heard of this? Have you heard of that? So a lot of people go in there thinking it's a regular job, and if you don't need to know, it's a need to know basis, right? If you're working in a data center, like, hey, you're going to provision one thing that didn't make the blog, you're going to provision the server farm so we can test all of the AVs and XDR endpoint that we have, to test it, to see how to bypass so we can make sure it works. They even had a QA that tested every time Windows Defender updated. So every time it updated, hey, make sure you test right after that to make sure our stuff still works. And you start to think of, like, wow, they're meticulous and they have all of this money, and their overhead, and their one team, I think, had a burn rate for the month of $162,000, and that was some of the services they bought, the employees, and then access. They purchased access to, like, tools and services. So
So,
just seeing that was interesting.
yeah, so on one hand, the whole world is cribbing about the fact that there is a shortage of cybersecurity workforce. I mean, 3 million, 4 million, to anybody's imagination. I don't know what's the reality. On the other hand, you are saying that there are some of the most sophisticated, skilled workers are now being recruited by such gangs. I'm sure initially they don't know what they are getting into, and perhaps that may be the reason that the attrition is higher, because once they get to know, they might want to leave. However, you have also said in your blog that their tooling is world class. Their trainings are some of the best that we have seen. Um,
Yeah.
so, are you trying to tell us that the security OEMs or the security service companies are not as well or as meticulous as these ransomware gangs are when it comes to
Well,
training and tooling?
the thing is, I think if you have your security department and you have, let's say I have a friend and we were having this conversation, and it's a good example to have. He is like the director of security in this company, and he has three people, right? And they have the best products. And I told him, I said, let me ask you a question. Someone from marketing gets compromised, and one of your products doesn't detect it. Now what? Because you don't have the eyeballs and you don't have the people to like dig into a lot of these things. So it's like, what happens now? Because you're up against a group that has a lot of people, that has people to just throw at a problem. And then you have, we also seen in the blogs that you have like these partnerships. You know how Microsoft partners with companies? They
Yep.
partner with like ransomware groups. And, you know, another thing that didn't make the blog was a conversation where someone was negotiating with the people from Conti, and it's like, hey, look, I have access, AD access to this company. I want you to, you know, I'll sell it to you, but whatever you get back, I want 30% of it. It doesn't matter what it is. You make that deal. I want 30% of it. They didn't, I believe they didn't agree to it, but one of the things that I would say about Conti is they want to keep their word. They want to keep their word to the customer. If you pay them, they will give you the key. They don't want people to think any way that if you don't pay them, they won't give you the key, because that's how they get paid. You know,
Absolutely.
one customer requested in the logs, this didn't make the chat blog as well. One customer requested, which they were having an internal argument. Conti people were having an internal argument because the customer said, if we pay you, we want to download and make sure that our files are deleted. So, you know, you don't, it doesn't come back. You don't extort us again. And they were saying, well, to do this, I have to set up a whole infrastructure and do this, this, and this. And the guy's like, so what? Go and do it. The guy's going to pay us. Make sure you get it up. Make sure we follow through with setting up this infrastructure for them. And they say, they like, once he pays, make sure you give it to them, because we want to keep our word that we're paying. And we've seen that throughout chats. Like, you know, there's the negotiator, as we call him, bio. He basically said to one of the guys to like, it was something of the sorts. I can't recall exactly, but it was something of the sorts where like, just act like if it was a red team. You're paying a red team company. You're gonna get the key once you pay us. Everything's gonna go back to normal. We'll tell you how to, you know, fix your issue. So that was interesting as well.
Tell me something. This is a little out of syllabus, but I want to know: do you find or do you see there is a nexus of forces which work together? I mean, the negotiator and the ransomware gang. Do you see a nexus there?
Well, you mean the Conti negotiator or the victims negotiator?
The Conti negotiator.
Well, I mean, his thing is to get the payment, right? They don't give a damn. And one of the, I think one of the misconceptions about like it won't happen to me is like, no way. You reading these logs, it doesn't matter if you're a Fortune 100 company or you are a small mid-sized company or even a small mom and pop shop that has a few, if they lock you up, they want to get payment. So, they could go as, I think their largest payment that I think I seen was $21 million.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
You know,
And
and supposedly since 2017, they've made over $2.7 billion.
wow,
Allegedly. We can't
wow,
confirm nor deny, but this is where the unicorn, comes from.
absolutely. And do you think? I mean, what percentage of organizations which are attacked agree and really make payments? Any idea about that?
I don't I don't really know, but what I would say is that once you're past that point and your systems are encrypted
Yeah,
and you're going to pay, this is why they get paid, right? Unless you have all backups and cold storage off site and stuff like that, and everybody's like, oh well, just reboot and do what you need to do, right? And I think what happens through my experience is and this is what I believe, like the way they're gonna get in again. So if they got in once, they're gonna get in again, right? So you know, don't ever think. I want people out there to think. Don't ever think it won't happen to you.
one more very candid question, Marco, for which I want a very, very candid answer. And I don't care what world thinks about us. So all these promises that these security vendors make that, my product is going to help you secure from the ransomware attacks, or it is going to make you ransomware proof or whatever. I mean, whatever the claim is, how true or how farcical it is.
I would say, as my friends from the UK say, it is bollocks. It is bollocks. It's bullshit. And the reason why it's bullshit, because I work for endpoint companies before, and even if you have AI and you got the best this, that, and the other, if it was like that, you would have to blacklist hashes when shit starts hitting the fan.
Absolutely.
So, do I think there's security is being proactive, and a lot of companies, a lot are reactive, right? Something happens, they react to it. Something happens, they react to it. It's not a proactive thing. You have to be constantly proactive on, yes, you have your security controls. Yes, you're testing your systems to make sure you have, you know, the latest and greatest XDR and firewalls. And the best thing you could do, it's a security practice. You're practicing until the shit hits the fan. I can't tell you how many times I've been on incidents where it's like the communication's lacking, so there's a process in place, right? That there's security gaps, and then when you're on the call, you hear someone, potentially screaming or something like that because look, there's the dumpster's on fire, and now is the time to react, and that preparation, wasn't there. So it's like going to war and you're not prepared to like go to war. And day to day it's about, people think about building, and it's like, do you have everything that you need to survive? And I think there's not, what I've through my experience, there's not enough brown bags, happening, brown bag lunches, your company's doomsday scenario happening. And I think that's how you begin to start to build out a security program. Like, what's the worst case scenario, for security, whether it's physical or digital or whatever the case is? Then it's those conversations that you need to have to understand what you need. It's just not buying products for then those products to be shelfware. And dealing with these gangs, they understand, they are meticulous, they are testing. This is a well oiled machine. They know what they are doing. So, you read these blogs and these training manuals. It's like how to become, they have a manual how to become a hacker. If you read that, guess what? You're going to be a hacker because it's a straight, in a sense, as in like learning how to do these techniques and get, you know, moving laterally within a network, but it's like how to become a hacker. It's good. And this is where the conclusion comes in is with these leaks, I do believe you will have those mini Conti groups or other ransomware groups are going to look at those logs and implement some of those techniques, maybe to even blend in or maybe just to add them to their tooling.
I was just about to come to that aspect that you just briefly mentioned. So, like you've described and elaborated about the Conti's armaments, including the Trickbot or Cobalt Strike, etc. You think that um, the other gangs also possess the equally lethal weapons, and how are they attacking the surface?
Yeah, I mean, when I was going through these leaks, all these tools, you could get these tools, either purchase them or on GitHub. But when I was going through the leaks, I seen a GitHub link and I called my friend. I'm like, you wouldn't believe. Guess what? You're in these leaks. Your tools in this leaks. I took a picture and sent it to him, and it was interesting, right? And you look at this and you like, wow, anyone could be targeted, right? I told you, I was like, maybe it's just me or I have a little ego, but the next day, I think it was Thursday, the Conti blog went offline, and that same day, I received I think an hour before or later, I received a call from Russia. I was like, yeah, right. I'm not picking this up. And I was like, I'm a little worried, but this is the game we're in.
I saw that screenshot on your mobile
Yeah.
with the code of I mean the calling code of Russia, and you described that you didn't want to pick up. Yeah, exactly the same number. Absolutely, absolutely. There you go. Yeah. So I
So
was wondering that
it's worrying. It is what it is. Look, you never want to get doxxed. You never want to get hacked. But the thing
absolutely.
is, it reminds me of I don't know if you ever seen the 8 Mile by Eminem. At the end of the movie, he's battling and he's saying all of his flaws. So for me, hey, bring it on. That's what I would tell Conti. Bring it on. Go ahead. Do what you want to do.
So you think that you will get some kind of threatening calls or messages from all these ransomware gangs, including Conti?
I hope so.
Okay.
I hope so. I mean, I don't
So
have, I don't want to get hacked, but if they want to try to hack me, go ahead. I don't, this is the thing that I would tell every person out there listening, watching. I have this rule. It's called DCS. Don't click shit. Anytime someone sends you a link, don't
ah,
click it. Don't click it.
yes.
So I always tell people don't click shit. My friend sent me a link. I'm not clicking that. Sorry.
Oh, that's a golden rule indeed, man. What a
Do not
rule.
click
Don't click shit.
anything.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
look, and since I've put out the blog, and I kid you not, I get texts like to get on. Some weird shit happening lately, but to me, it doesn't. There you go. I got this text to join this like WhatsApp. Never happened before. I got email with an audio file. I'm like, try harder, dude. Try harder. Right? I'm not gonna waste my time to do recon and go back and forth, but I'm like, try harder. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Marco, one last thing. I know your time is very precious and I will not hold you more. Well, finally, how do you visualize the future? How, I mean, the lethality of ransomware is in our minds now. We know how lethal it could be and how more lethal it could be in the future. So, do you think that the law enforcement and legislations are really doing any job regarding this, or it is just a fluff?
Listen, I truly believe that it's only going to get worse because of all the success everyone is having, right? So, with that being said, like, I could see this getting worse on the policies and legal side and stuff like that. It's very hard, right? Because if you have these people in place, companies want to try to keep it as quiet as possible. They don't want no one to know, right? But by law, you have to disclose that, you've been exposed by this group. So it's always a balance, but the way I think of it, and again, I'm not in that position and I don't want to even, this is pure my opinion. Like, it's only going to get worse. So this space is only going to get bigger, right? And when you're dealing with policy and laws, it becomes very. I'm trying to get a politically correct term, except the only thing that comes to my mind is like fluff, right? You're all you're doing is putting a much more of a buffer between, the company as well as the ransomware group, but this this problem is not going away. This problem is not going away, and it won't go away. And I only see more groups coming into this space over the next 3 4 years. And then, because potentially with Conti, you have these groups that splinter, right? You have,
Yeah,
Conti part, you know, Conti Brazil or stuff like
I
that. So
agree. I agree.
so you're gonna see those fractions, and they're gonna splinter, do their own thing, and I don't have to. If we made all this money, I could do it by myself, and I don't need them.
Yeah,
And then you
splinter
have
is
other
one thing.
groups
Then
like me.
secondly, for some time they will go, they will hibernate, and then they will reappear, resurrect with some new methodology and new techniques. One more thing, my audience will curse me if I don't ask this,
Mhm.
but you know, this is a problem, and we all know it is a grave problem. But do you think there is a solution?
I do. I do. I think when it comes down to it, I think education of not only having your security people, but educating employees on having them understand and educating them. Every time someone sends you a email with a link, don't click it. Or you have, a Word document that is sent to you. It's curiosity that's going to make you double click on it. What's in there? It's something that's going to change me. So, there's a lot of techniques to trick the end user. And if you could provide education,
Yep.
that to me will pay more in the long run than just buying, security tools. I think with a good security educational program, when I was at Intel, everybody had a mandatory security awareness training that and it was awesome. It was interactive. They gave you examples, and there's companies that do that. And I think you pay for something like that, it will pay, it will help you reduce that, threat level from the end users. Because look, a lot of times you still get these companies get spearfished all the time,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
and
Absolutely.
that's a win. So if I would say you have money, you have a budget, go and train not only just your security people and invest in your security. I always say that for your security practitioners. Here's your golden nugget coming away if you're on defense, go and take offensive security courses to
Oh, yeah.
understand the offensive side so you can secure the defense much better. And for your red teamers, go take, defensive courses to learn how to bypass these systems. And then, if you still have money left over, make sure you create a security awareness program for your organization and make it mandatory, because that's the only way you're going to you're going to get around this. How many
I
people
can't
would have?
agree. I can't agree more with you, Marco, on this. And this brings us back to the basics. If your fundamentals are strong and if your basics are in place, then
Mm-hmm.
all you can do is you can fairly minimize the threat surface and danger of being attacked or taken for ransom. Excellent, excellent. I mean, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I can go on and on. However, in the interest of time, I would like to curtail it here. And the
Yes.
moment you publish your next blog, I am coming after you. And my
Thank
and
you,
my
sir.
biggest takeaway from this is, whether people like it or not, don't bloody click the shit.
Shit.
That's
Don't
that's the
click
golden
shit.
thumb rule. Yep.
Yes. I tell you, just right before we hang up, the three things that happened to me: I got an email, I got a text, and
Yeah.
someone called from Russia.
Absolutely.
Now, if someone, Billy or Jesse from marketing, do you think they would have fell into one of the three traps that,
Oh, absolutely. I can vouch for it. They would have.
yeah,
Yeah.
they would have fell for one of the three. It doesn't have to be, and
Absolutely.
and I don't know. Maybe it's me overthinking, but maybe it's not. And that is securities.
That is
Being
the key.
aware, that understanding that risk level. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely.
What a
Absolutely. Marco,
wonderful
it's a
time I had.
absolutely pleasure.